Okay, I think we're live. Good afternoon, everybody. Just double checking that we are live. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome. Before we start our program, I will ask Brother Glenn to please pray for us so that we can commence.
Sure, everybody, let's pray. Father in heaven, it's so good to have a Sabbath. It's so good to have time that we can spend with you. And so, Lord, we pray now that as we meet up, that your Spirit would speak to our hearts, that you would help us to gain deep insights into what it means to be good stewards for you in our lives, in our businesses, in our jobs, in everything that we're doing. So we pray for your guidance. We pray to hear your voice speak. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Glenn. Welcome, everybody, and our apologies for starting slightly late. We had some technical glitches, and but we pray that the Lord will be with us and that the challenges will not persist. As we start our program today, which is a stewardship program, as you may all be aware, I will ask our panelists to introduce themselves. I will start with Brother Glenn, and please introduce yourself briefly for our audience. Who are you? What is it that you do? And then we can move to Sister Andiswa, Brother Gobile, and then Pastor Lefume.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So my name is Glenn Wright. So I'm a chartered accountant by training, and I've spent 15, 16 years in one of the international accounting firms where I was a partner there. And a number of years ago, I left that, and I'm kind of split in half. I have a consulting business where I have a number of high net worth individuals who want a finance perspective on their business, and so I help them. And then I have another business that I'm involved with where we look at providing fund solutions to social problems. It's kind of interesting. And so I'm kind of split 50-50, and that's what I do.
All right. Thank you. Sister Andiswa? You are still on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon and happy Sabbath to everyone. Can you hear me? My name is Mazoko. I go to church at Kayale 2 SDA. I'm currently can you hear me? I'm currently an occupational therapist running a private practice. I'm an occupational therapist and a registered psychological counselor. I've worked with Department of Health and Department of Education. I've spent my first mainly doing medical, legal, and personal injuries, doing health management programs. That's basically what I'm doing. I'm working with road accident fund, working with attorneys that are doing personal injuries, and here and there I'm doing learning disabilities, working with
Okay, I think we might have lost her a bit, but we will persist. I hope we will eventually find each other, Sister Andiswa. But you can put yourself on mute for now. Thank you very much for the introduction, Brother Gobile. Over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm Gobile. I am a management consultant. Thank you.
Okay, that was surprisingly brief. Pastor, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wright and X Lefume, Stewardship Director for Cape Conference. Maybe I might as well, Mrs. Mali, introduce our program for today. This is a sequel to the one we had when we were speaking about towards financial freedom, where we had panelists speaking to various things that would lead to financial freedom. Now we are doing part 2 of that. We are continuing with making sure that we understand that God is with us in this time where we are scourged by this pandemic, affecting our incomes, affecting our jobs, affecting our health. So we want to, as a stewardship department, bring solutions to these kinds of challenges. Losing of jobs, that's what we are seeking to attend to. By way of introducing today's program, I want us to read from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and I'm reading verse 13. It reads, "And the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. You shall be above only, and not be beneath, if you heed the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today, and are careful to observe them." So this is what I want us to take note of as we start today's program. This is a promise that God has given to His children by us being obedient, listening, and heeding His commands as His children, as His stewards. This is a benefit or a result that will come out of that. When God speaks about this being the first and not the last, being the head and not the tail, meant God's children would excel in everything they undertake. So Israel experienced that because there were times when they were that obedient to God and they experienced what God is saying. Now I am bringing this to our attention so that we understand even today to spiritual Israel, this is still applicable. It also meant that they would be the richest and not the poorest of people. That's what it meant. And since this promise was not withdrawn anywhere in the Bible, I think it is right for me to conclude and for us to conclude that it still stands even today. I read a book called Counsels on Stewardship, page 148. There it is said, the desire to accumulate wealth is an original affection of our nature, implanted there by our Heavenly Father for noble ends. So for us to seek financial freedom, for us to want to experience that financial freedom, it is not something that is sinful. It is something that has been planted in us by God. Desire of Ages also has this to say, another book I read as well. By his own example, he taught that it is our duty to be industrious. All should find something to do that will be beneficial to themselves and helpful to others. God appointed work as a blessing, and only the diligent worker finds true glory and joy of life. So today we are going to be building on what we started when we were speaking under the theme that said towards financial freedom. Today we have a something that says give God something to bless. Give God something to bless. It's going to be unpacked by the panelists, and I will also dwell on this when we do our Vespers as we conclude today's program, where we are saying, as God's children, let's give God something to bless. Yes, we have the income that we receive, whether it is a salary or wages. We understand that we receive it because of God's blessing. But over and above that, with that, you must be able to give God something He can bless. And that's what the panelists will be unpacking. That's what the panelists will be speaking to. Be it a business, be it what you do as an individual, be it helping others, because the ends for which God is giving us wealth, they are noble. And now we will be unpacking that noble part of us being able, because God has enabled us and because God has blessed us to accumulate that wealth, and then we will be able to do that which is expected of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mfundisi. Thank you. I will just make maybe this important announcement for those that are viewing, that if you have questions, please type them on the chat section and we will note them as we go along. Kindly make sure that your questions are related to the topic being addressed. So let's try to keep to what we are talking about so that we can be able to elaborate more on those points. When we're talking about elaborating more, Mfundisi, you just mentioned that to want to be wealthy is good. How do you balance that thought with the thought of money being the root of all evil?
All right. I think, as I said, Deuteronomy and other texts and the books I have read, this thing has been given to us by God for noble reasons. We are there to support each other. We are there to take care of each other. And those of us who have, the Bible says we will always have those that are less fortunate than us. So we are able to help those and to make sure that their life is better. We share a blessing that God has blessed us with others. So money being the root of all evil is not correct. The Bible says it is not money that is the root of all evil. It is the love of money. And by that it means when I am wealthy and I then remove God from his place and I place my wealth, then that's where it becomes evil. Because now it has replaced God, who is the source of the blessing, who is the one who has enabled me to accumulate that wealth. So money is not the root of all evil, but the love of money is the root of all evil, because love of money will cause me to compromise all ethics, all Christian principles, all noble virtues and values, and then I would then accumulate my wealth in unorthodox ways, and then it becomes evil, it becomes wrong. But it is not the issue of having money. God gives us that. So we are number one, we are not under, we are not beneath, we are above, and we are lenders and not borrowers. That's the aim of God. That's what he wants for us. And this is why, as the stewardship department, we want to give that knowledge to people, because more than anything, we need that knowledge that will enable us to amass, accumulate that wealth, because God, before he expects anything from us, he first gives. And how better or how else can he do that by using some of us who already have experienced this, who have the know-how of doing this, to share that knowledge and empower each other and empower others. And that's why we're having this program, to do just that.
Exactly. I think to talk about these issues is also important for empowering each other. And part of what was discussed in the previous session was talking about the importance of savings, the importance of investments, the importance of having all these financial documents and all these financial streams that we've got. And part of that covered, I think, an important topic around wills, which I think was addressed. For those that did not watch, it's still available on the page and on the YouTube channel, so that you can go back and just have a view of what was addressed. We've just come out from July being noted as one of the important months of the year because it's a savings month. And part of what we are talking about, financial freedom, we're talking about being able to afford and being able to do things that we want to do. I think it's just important to note how important it is for us to continue the culture of saving and to implant that culture of saving. Saving, then we can use our savings for our emergencies, to minimize financial risks when we have to go into some business ventures or when we have to buy certain assets. But there's also a portion of saving that sometimes we might not think about, which is saving on interest. And I'd like you, Brother Glenn, to come in on this. We had a question, I think, the previous session, or you had mentioned the point of trying to pay off your bond earlier and how you can benefit from that. Can you just elaborate and share with us how we can be able to do that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nobisa. So I think the best way to explain this is, so the context was when we were talking about getting out of debt, and we spoke about God's 3-step plan to get out of debt. And if the viewers want to see that again, they can just they can watch the last session that you said was still on the page. And in that, I said that coming out of this, or following that kind of thinking about getting out of debt and paying less interest, as you said, is a strategy for how to buy a home. And I'm going to explain this by telling a story. And it's the story of two families. And I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see if this is going to work. Share entire screen. This should work. Share. Okay. So is that working?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to tell a story here of two families. Now, I've made this story up, right? And this is obviously important because for most people, buying a home is going to be the biggest investment that most people are going to make. So it makes sense that you want to do this in a way, if you want to be a steward of what God has given us, we want to do it in a way that's most, I don't know, stewardful. I don't know what the right word is, but in a way that you are exercising stewardship. So I'm going to tell this as an example or as a story of two families. Now, you know why the one family is called the Joneses, right? It's because you got to keep up with the Joneses. You've all heard that saying before.
Correct, yeah.
And the other family I've called the Smalls. Now, I've just called them the Smalls. I don't know really why, but maybe you'll see why in a second. Now, these two families are exactly the same. Now, when I mean exactly the same. The fathers have the same job and earn the same pay. These mothers may work, I don't know whether they do or don't, but if they do, they both have exactly the same job and earn exactly the same income. Their kids go to the same schools and are in the same grades. They eat the same food. So you kind of get the idea that these two families are mirror images. Does that make sense? So the interesting thing about these two families is that they have a dream house that they want to buy. And the dream house is actually two houses that are right next to each other. And the two houses look the same and cost the same. They have the same sale price. So we have this idea of these two families who are like exactly mirror images, and their dream house is exactly the same house. So in South Africa at the moment, the average house price, if you look at News 24, Property 24, is somewhere around 1.5 million rand. So I've used that as an example here of the dream house, right? And now what most people will do is you'll go to the bank and you'll get 100% 20-year bond. So where you'll be paying your mortgage bond off for 20 years, and at the end of 20 years, you will own the house off. And so both the families, they go see the estate agent and they go look at this house, and this is a beautiful house, and they both say, this is my dream house. I want to buy this house. So they would get the home loan for 1.5 million rand because it's 100% bond, and they're going to be paying monthly payments of 14,475 rand at around a 10% interest rate. I know its interest rate's a little bit lower than that at the moment, but I kept it at 10% for medium to long term. And so that means they're going to pay 14,475 rand for 240 payments, which is 12 months times 20 years, 240 payments. So that's a lot of 14,475 rand payments, right?
Correct.
So that's the Joneses. They go out, they get their 20-year bond, and they buy the house. They can just afford the mortgage bond payment, and they're now paying this. They're in the 20-year bond. Now, the Smalls are an interesting family. Their dream house, like I said, costs exactly the same amount of money. But they don't know why. But they decide that they're going to try follow the biblical 7-year plan of debt. So this means that they can also afford to pay 14,475 rand per month, but they've decided, hey guys, I want to pay the house off in 7 years, because they don't know why, but they're going to try this out and see what happens. So they want to pay the house off in 7 years. That means they can afford to buy a house for just under 872,000 rand. So in actual fact, the home loan is for 871 rand, 946 to be precise. It's also 100% bond that they get, and they are making monthly payments of 14,475 rand a month, which they are paying for 84 payments, which is 12 months times 7 years. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So after 7 years, the Smalls then say, hey guys, so we now own this house 100%, but we still have our dream house we want to buy. And with house price inflation at, let's say, 6% per year, they bought the house, their first house, and they're able to sell it for 1.3 million rand. Will you believe it? That's what inflation does. So they sell their first house for 1.3 million rand. And they go out and they buy their dream house. And you know what? That house right next to the Joneses is still available. Except now that with the house price inflation, it now costs 2.2 million rand, just over 2.2 million rand to buy their dream house.
Okay.
But so they have 1.3 million rand to pay as a down payment, right? Because they sold their first house. So they're financing 2.2 million rand minus the 1.3 million rand. Their mortgage bond on the second house is 944,000 rand, which means they are making monthly payments of 15,678 rand again, because they're saying, guys, I don't know why, but I'm going to follow God's plan again with debt, where debt was basically canceled at the end of every 7 years. I'm going to work this out so I can pay off the second mortgage bond again of over 7 years. And so they make monthly payments of 15,678 rand for 84 payments, which is 12 months times 7 years. And then at the end of 14 years, the Smalls have paid off their second bond, right? So they're 14 years in. They've paid off their first house in the first 7 years. And in the second 7 years, they paid off their second house. But now they're sitting and they are having 15,678 rand, which was their mortgage bond payment that they don't have to pay anymore. And they go and they put it in the bank. And they get a return of 5% for this balance of the 6 years. So now both families are at the end of 20 years. One family, the Joneses, let's have a look at them first. So their original dream house cost 1.5 million rand. Then they paid for 20 years, they paid monthly payments of 14,475 rand, right? That means in a total, they paid to the bank 3.47 million rand. That's a lot of money, right? And of that amount, they paid 1.9 million rand. Over 1.9 million rand they paid to the bank in interest. The Smalls, however, they now also live in their dream house. They paid monthly payments of 14,475 rand for 7 years on the first house, and they paid monthly payments of 15,678 rand for 7 years on the second dream house. But here's the kicker, right? So they paid 2.5 million rand to the bank for their dream house, where the Joneses paid 3.4 million rand to the bank for their dream house.
Okay.
So instead of paying 1.9 million rand to the bank in interest, the Smalls paid 700,000 rand to the bank in interest. But they live in the same house now. And here's the real kicker, is that the Smalls took that 15,000 rand at the end of the 7 years. And then, so for year 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, they invested the money in the bank. And they now have 1.3 million rand in the bank. So at the end of 20 years, the two families got together and they compared notes. Like I always ask this question when I talk about this is, who do you think paid for the dinner, right? Like the Smalls paid for the dinner, right?
They definitely did.
So the point here is that like God's this plan of 7-year debt, instead of buying big up front, rather buy what you can afford to pay off sooner, and then you step it up over time. That's kind of what I'm suggesting about buying a house. Because when you do the numbers, it's a no-brainer. It just makes a whole lot of sense. Now, I know for some people, this like 1.5 million rand is a very scary number to think of a house. So I ran the same scenario on a cheaper house. Okay. So let's say the dream house costs 750,000 rand. That would mean that the Joneses are making monthly payments of 7,200 rand for 20 years. They pay a total of 1.7 million rand to the bank, of which 900, or just under 1 million rand, is paid to the bank in interest. The Smalls buy their first house for just under 436,000 rand. They make a monthly payment of also 7,238 rand for 7 years. They sell the first house for 655,000 rand because there's obviously property price inflation, and buy the dream house, which now costs not 750,000 rand, but 1.1 million rand. And they take out a difference. So they obviously now have 655,000 rand in the bank, and they use that as a down payment to pay off against the second house of 1.1 million rand. So their second mortgage bond is 472,000 rand, which means they're making a monthly payment of 7,839 rand for 7 years. They pay for their dream house, the same dream house again. They pay a total of 1.2 million rand to the bank. And of that, they paid 358,000 rand in interest. And again, they took the 7,839 rand from years 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, which is when they no longer had a mortgage bond, but the Joneses did have a mortgage bond. And they are now have 659,000 rand in the bank. So let me stop sharing now. Alrighty. Okay, I'm back, right?
Yes, you are.
Oh, good man. Okay. So basically what we're doing here is I'm showing the power of long-term debt has over us. When we take out long mortgage bonds, there's a phenomenal amount of money that goes to the bank in interest. In fact, when in the first couple of years of the mortgage bond, when you're making your monthly payment, the reality is that huge portions of that. So in the first example where we spoke about the monthly payment being about 14,500 rand, the reality is like maybe a couple of $100 every month goes to capital, to paying off the actual bond. The rest is all interest on these long mortgage bonds. So all I'm suggesting, and I think this is like super practical advice for our viewers out there, is that just instead of buying the biggest house you can afford, step it up over time. Buy something that you can take the same amount that you can afford, but you shorten the time period. So you buy a cheaper house that you can afford to pay off over a shorter period of time. And I think the 7 years, I don't know why God chose 7 years. Maybe he knew that we'd have interest, or he did knew that we'd have interest, but like maybe he was just being really clever about it all or whatever. So yeah, that's what I'm suggesting we do. And I see there's a question that's come in from Augustina. It says, can I go to the bank and change my plan from 20 years to 7 years? Yes, you can. The banks will not limit you to paying more. You're allowed to pay more to them, and they are not allowed to, under the National Credit Act, they're not allowed to charge you penalties for that.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question, that if you already have, so this scenario is if you have not bought a house yet a house yet. So let's say you already have a bond,
Yeah.
and you are 10 years in already.
Yeah.
But you're hearing this information now for the first time. What would be your plan of action? What can you do to pay it sooner, seeing that you've missed the 7-year mark at that time? But what is it that you can be able to do?
Yeah, really good question. So I think the story, when you understand the story of your home loan, which is the banks call it an amortization schedule, which is just really a big name to say the story of your home loan. And I mentioned earlier how, particularly in the early years of the home loan, you're actually paying very little of the actual original amount of the loan that you took out. You're actually repaying very little in the first, almost 5, 6, 7, 8 years. It's only when you're in the later part of the mortgage bond that it starts accelerating. And I think only 3/4 through, if I remember correctly, does the interest on the payment only equal the capital payment. So if you're paying, let's say, 7,000 Rand a month, only much later in the life of the home loan does 3,500 Rand even go to repaying the actual home loan. The rest is going towards interest. So what I do is I always suggest people, get some, sometimes people have assets sitting in their garage. Like maybe it's a motorcycle that the dad was riding when he was younger and he doesn't use anymore. Or maybe it's, I don't know, whatever, The idea is then to get rid of some of those assets and use the money to go and pay off your home loan, install or lump sums extra on your home loan.
Okay.
So the idea is you still want to be paying off your home loan faster, because I wish I should have prepared a little Excel summary of what a home loan looks like. I may put one together quickly now and show the viewers a little bit later on. Because when you understand that, so if I make a payment now of, let's say I'm halfway through my home loan and I make an extra payment of, I don't know, 1,000 Rand. The reality is that you're wiping probably 6 or 7 months off your home loan that you're not having to pay anymore. Because the capital amount, all of that extra amount that you're paying goes towards the actual home loan. None of it goes towards interest. So any extra amounts that you're paying are going directly to the home loan, and you are wiping months and months of the life of 20 years. So then you're going from 20 years down to, let's say, 19 years, or depending how much you pay or how early it is, you're knocking years off the life of your home loan. And particularly if you're doing this in the early part of your home loan, you can knock years off the life of the home loan just by paying these an extra installment.
Okay.
Hope that makes sense. I wish I really should have put a little summary of what a home loan looks like then for the viewers. That would have made a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, you can look for it while we continue to talk. If there are more questions that do come up, we can fill them a bit later. But I think what you're mentioning is really being responsible as a person, and I think that's more relevant when we talk about stewardship. That God has entrusted us with so much, and it only makes sense that we take care of that and we do our best to make sure that if we cannot avoid the debt, then we are responsible in terms of handling that debt. There is a discussion that we had. I think we had offline earlier, where we were talking about entrepreneurship, and while we are starting to talk about being able to pay more, there is an angle that I think we can talk about later. If you are working and you might not have the additional, because as it stands, you are up to your neck in terms of installments of everything else that you're paying. So to get that 1,000 Rand extra would be a mission out of your current budget. So we will mention a bit later to talk about what is it that maybe you can look at doing, and how you can keep yourself energized when you're looking at other things to do. But this conversation that we're talking about was talking about entrepreneurship, and I think it's something that is being talked about at different platforms. What I would like to know is, do you think this is something that we should do as Christians? Should we go out? Pastor Elia talked about being the head and not the tail. How can we talk about being entrepreneurs in the spiritual sense of it? Do we have any basis for that? Brother Gobile, you can go first.
Thank you so much, Noah. Good afternoon to our viewers. Look, in the context of what we are talking about today, giving God reason to or something to bless, more often than not, business people in the church generally feel that they actually do not have a space to participate in the church, so that they can do they can make a contribution from a business perspective. I mean, we've just heard Glenn here talking about things that are very, very fundamental for our welfare as well. But generally, business people feel that there is no space for them to participate. Of course, they participate in the church, or they contribute in the church as elders, as treasurers, as deacons and stuff. But as business people, like doctors do, like your teachers do, and so forth, maybe that's a challenge that we are putting to Pastor Lefume and the leadership of the church. However, having said that, I do think that business people, of course, I'm gonna just look at but one perspective.
Okay.
There are so many. As an example, Glenn was just talking about one. I think business people also have a lot of contribution to make. You know, a great philosopher that I like, it's George Bernard Shaw. He says, people who get on in this world are those who are looking for circumstances they want, and if can't find them, they make them. And I'm saying, business people actually have to make those circumstances. As I've said, I will just pick one. One of them is the broadening of the base. When I say broadening of the base, I'm referring to a scenario where business people can participate in the broadening of the base of resources within the church. Again, I'm going to refer to what Glenn has been talking about. Where to follow that advice, which is actually so biblically anchored. There is a great opportunity to actually broaden the resource base within the church. Now, at an individual basis, also at corporate basis. But I'm going to be talking about more. I'm going to have two parts. One, I'm going to start with business people as individuals, and maybe some of the church members. When I'm saying maybe the opportunities on broadening the base, I'm looking at a situation where business people that are in the church can start to identify people that they can bring on board and mentor them. And as they mentor them, they coach and mentor them. In other words, Sibongile as an entrepreneur must produce another Sibongile who is as good as he is, if he is, or even better.
Okay.
Glenn has to produce another Glenn. So and so on. Sporo, Mteza, and I'm just mentioning the names of the business people that I know that are actually coming to my mind at the moment, and Tutu and so forth. Now you have a space there, and I'm saying maybe it's actually time to do that. When we do that, then we are actually going to be increasing the pool. We are going to be increasing the pool of resources for various programs and various issues and things that we can do. We are going to increase the pool of people who are employed. I mean, if you're looking at the COVID, Mfundisi couldn't have said it any better. If you're looking at the impact of COVID now, maybe this is a wake-up call for us to start thinking innovatively and say, in my community, in my environment, within the people that are within my reach, who can I pick up, mentor, coach, and produce a business person out of? Because that is God's original intention. When God took Israel to the promised land, he actually wanted them to be industrious. He wanted them to be the leaders. He wanted them to be driving productivity. God was not. God was still aware that, look, some would not be able to, but still, that still was his intention. I mean, I always say this, and this is not, I'm not a theologian, I must make that disclaimer now.
Thank you.
I always say, if you're looking at the fourth commandment of the 10 commandments,
yeah,
actually the fourth commandment is talking to business people. Because if you're looking at the things that God says, such and such and such an element must do nothing, and you look at all of those elements that that text is talking about, those were elements of people who were industrious.
okay.
And I always say, therefore, business people, God is talking to you. You have a role to play. You actually must begin to occupy the position that you have, so that you can actually restore God's original intention. But then, within the context of that, now allow me to just mention this: that God actually wants to breed a giving spirit out of us.
Yes.
When He wants us to do this, God actually wants to breed a breeding spirit. When I talk about the breeding spirit, I think God understood that at some stage in our living, people would be possessed with greed. People will be preoccupied with indulgence. People will be captured by acquisitions, such that they will think less of giving. And he actually introduced, and again, I must say this, Fundisi, Pastor Lefume, that this is not theology. This is just me gleaning on some of the biblical texts. When God introduces burnt offerings, and I look at it from me today, God would say, I want the fattest of your, I want the fattest of yours, the one that has no blemish. And when I look at it, I'm saying, my goodness, if I'm a manufacturer, basically God says I must take my best product. And remember, your best product is a source of your bargaining in terms of pricing.
Yes.
Now, God then says, bring the best, that which you would bargain with for revenue, and give it. And you know, what would iron me, Noah, is that you would put it there and you burn it, and it burns to ashes. It's like God saying, I am teaching you to give without squealing.
I think on that point of giving without
you watch
squealing,
it burn
we were
to finish.
yeah.
And
I think on that point of squealing, we were talking with Mfundisi earlier that there is an idea that as we are living now with the COVID-19 pandemic, we are losing income. There is so much uncertainty, and there's no security of income really. How relevant is tithing at this time? It might be a controversial issue to talk about, but how relevant is tithing during this time where we don't know, we've taken cuts, we don't know if we're going to have an income. Big corporations have come out and say we are retrenching people by the thousands. How relevant is that, Mfundisi, and how important is it for the church to continually make an emphasis on that?
Maybe before he comes in, can I come in before you come in, so that I can then finish the cycle of my contribution? I think the point I wanted to make was, sorry, Mfundisi, can I come in just to finish the cycle of my contribution?
Sure.
And I will ride on your question, Noah. Look, where I was getting was God's purpose with giving was meant to create a transformation of the heart. God's intention was to actually transform the heart of the being. Hence, I was making an example of a burnt offering. Basically, you go and give it, and you watch it and you learn to appreciate it without complaining, without doing anything. And then you breed the culture of giving and giving without expecting to get anything. In the context of today, during the COVID time, hence I am saying we actually have a responsibility of actually giving. I put it as a leg up.
Yes.
As a business, we need to identify people that we can give a leg up. Here is another element to it. Then I give to the pastor. This does not only go for those who are aspiring, who are entrepreneurs currently. I am also looking at people who are employed, and I'm saying, which is very, very interesting to me. Maybe it's about time that those side hustlings, we start looking at them, because they begin to complement income. When I talk about side hustling, I will make silly examples. Some people come back from work and go do some hair to some other people. Some people are actually selling your aloe vera products. Some people are doing a whole lot of side hustling. And the interesting thing about side hustling, at some stage as a business person, you will find out that there is a tilt of the scale. You do the side hustling up to a point where it generates enough revenue for you to decide to say, look, I'm quitting working. I'm going full time on my hustling. I'm going to take the risk with the Lord by my side. And I think in a nutshell, that's what God wants of us. But systematically, those who are already there, who are already in the business space, we have a duty to actually broaden the base.
The base, okay. So we'll come back to that point a bit later, Desposh. Mfundisi, we're giving over to you.
Okay, no, thank you. If you read Matthew 24:14, it states that the end of the world will only come when the message has gone to everyone in the world. So that means until everyone has been given an opportunity to make a choice for Jesus or against him. And for that to happen, the gospel wills. So there's no questioning of the relevance of us giving offering, us returning that which belongs to God, because that reminds us that it has been him, as I read in the first text I read, that has given us that ability. And that zeal, and he has given us the ability to work and accumulate this. So we have been stewards, or we are stewards of wealth or income or increase that God is giving to us, not only for our own good, but that wealth, that income, that increase we have been entrusted with by God. It is to be used to prepare a people for the soon return of Jesus. So it is always relevant. Now, to come directly to your point, at a time such as this, if we put God first, at a time such as this, that is giving God something to bless.
Okay. There's a comment from Pastor Lupondwana that adds on to your point that says tithe presupposes that you now have something that you did not have before, which is an increase. When your increase decreases, your tithe decreases. When your increase disappears, so does your tithe. So it's based on income. So if you still have income, then tithing for you is relevant.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about entrepreneurship and how you go as a person looking after a particular service or producing a certain product, right? That we're talking about. And Sister Anderson, you are an entrepreneur. Can you take us briefly through your journey of entrepreneurship and what that has meant for you? You're on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. As I introduce myself, I'm in counseling and medical business. Yes. Taking you back, started my business to work on my own in 2009, which is about more than 10 years now. I started from nothing, only faith that pushed me. As I said that I'm in a medical profession, and what motivated me to have my own business, what pushed me to have my own business. At the time I was working, I must be honest that I was not as much as regarding my profession, I was getting satisfaction because I was working with children with disabilities. But financially, I was under a very stressful situation, which I felt that it was also affecting my relationship with God, because at that time I would have reason not to tithe because of my financial situation. And that kept me very, very, like, at the time I wanted to have a closer relationship with God, and I felt that the financial side of things is not getting, I'm not getting there. I do want to tithe. But I had situation at that time that I felt I'm not giving it enough to God. So, and the other thing that motivated me, also I'm in a profession that I felt my communication don't know much, my population don't know much about occupational therapy. So I also had that zeal to want to give back to my population, where I would advocate about occupational therapy. And the space I was at the school working for government didn't allow me to do that. So it was not an easy decision. It was difficult decision to make, because at the time I was going to lose an income and facing a world of uncertainties. But I prayed a lot about it, and the first thing I did is to do a research in terms of how do you go about when you open your private practice. And throughout my research, it looks like, okay, it's easy because there's nothing much. There's nothing. You don't need much to start up an occupational therapy practice. You can use what you have, and only what I had that time was my experience, my 10 years experience as an occupational therapist, and the love of helping others. So I wanted to reach the broader community and reaching to the younger ones to know about this kind of profession. So I took the step of faith with nothing. I started my business with nothing, but I planned about it for about a year, and then I decided in 2009, well, with a step of faith and the verse that kept me going in my business, that gave me strength. It's in Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 18, that God give you the power to make income. So that was the verse. That was the verse that gave me strength, that if God can give me this, I'm relying on you, God, because I don't have the financial stability in terms of starting the practice. And through my research, and I find out that you medical aid will be able to pay you. So while I was in the environment of a school, I would do marketing. I will do marketing with few of clients, and the parents that, and I will market myself to parents, telling them that I will be doing a private practice. So trying to get a market. So that's how I started my business. I think I started about 10 clients. So it was like a hand-to-mouth thing. At that time, I had a card to pay, and I was losing stability of getting a monthly income. Fortunately, at that time, my husband was working, so we discussed it together, and with the support that you go for it, and then I'll take over of whatever you were responsible to pay. So that was a bonus. So I had support from my husband, and trusting God that God will give me the strength to do this.
Okay.
And yes, and then the motivation was that I want to reach the broader community. And I tell you, with the prayers and that, I told myself that the reason that I left employment was to get more closer to God, to do what is right in the eyes of God. And I told myself, with my first client, that is where I'm going to start tithing.
Okay. You mentioned something. You mentioned something that is very, very important. I think you mentioned that you started with research, right? So before you jumped in, before you did anything, faith was also a big factor. But you researched and you made sure that you knew what you were getting yourself into. What other building blocks? Maybe the gents can come in here as well. What other building blocks are important for entrepreneurs when they are starting? The research is one, because it sets the foundation for you. But what else do you consider important that people should get out of this to say, I've got an idea, I've got a passion, and your passion in your case was to make sure that your community knew about this, because not everybody in your community had the same exposure that you had. But someone else might have a different passion. They have the research. What else do they need to have a successful business?
To answer that, you also, after research, you need to know, the research will guide you what you need for your business, what steps to follow. For example, in my case, I had one thing, as I said, that fortunately for my practice for occupational therapy, you don't need much, but the space, where are you going to work? It's very important that you are offering a confidential services where people are dealing with people that are stressful, that have depression. So you need to make sure that you have relevant tools that will grow your business. For example, it is important to know that what makes your business, what makes your clients to choose you rather not choosing another therapist. For example, on my basis, the problem that I identify while I was employed is that there are few of us, like person speaking therapists. Okay. So that was the thing that that made me to think that I've got something that most of occupational therapists don't have, and it's needed, because sometimes, because of the context that we don't, when you deal with in medical profession, it is important that people that you see, clients that you see, you can relate to them. So I identified the need that for our population, concept speaking, there were few therapists, there were no therapists out there, private or occupational therapists, that the client could go and identify. For example, I was working at a school where most of the people come from a background where there are a lot of social ills.
Okay.
So, and with my professional background, I had something to add that at least I know I could relate to a person that that is, for example, let me make an example. I can relate with a person that is depressed and comes to me, but that person is about, maybe that person is more than 18 years old, still staying at home. So, for example, with another person, I can relate, I can understand why that person is still staying at home. For example, if it's another therapist that's coming from another background that doesn't understand in the first place, why are you having financial problems that are making you depressed and you're still staying with your family? Whereas with me coming with my professional background and with my social background, that I've been in the same community as this person, so I can relate to that. So that was another reason that made me to step out of my comfort zone and be of service to those that don't have people that can relate and understand them from their social perspective.
Okay, I think I captured that. You've mentioned two important points. Before we go to Brother Gobile quickly, you've mentioned two important points. That number one, there's integrity that has to come in because people trust you, and integrity is important as part of the building blocks. The second one, which worked for you, was being relatable. So you were relatable to your clientele. Brother Gobile, can you add on the building blocks that that entrepreneurs need to have?
Okay, thank you, Noah. Actually, Andy has
Andy, sorry,
mentioned
you
a
can
very.
put yourself on mute, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Andy has alluded to a very, very important element or part of the building block. Look, when I started talking, I first started talking about a leg up. Look, I believe in, as a matter of fact, no one in the world has not been given a leg up. We are all given a leg up by someone. Big business, great guys have been given a leg up in one way or the other. Hence, I'm saying, as a challenge to entrepreneurs within the church, this is the space that we need to be occupying so that we can then broaden the base. That's the first thing. But then I also talked about the side hustle. I'm talking about side hustle for this reason. You have an option. You have an option to go big. Now, I always, and I've been advised against. Perhaps this is an advice that I'm giving. If you do not have experience in business and you want to go big, business has its own teething problem. It actually can take you down and make you sick when things go wrong. Now, it's great businesses are businesses that have been built over time, because one of the things that you do, it is to build a reputation. You build a reputation, and you also allow teething problems, because you learn from teething problems. There are certain things that are not written, but they always emerge as you progress in business. That's but one of the blocks. And the other one is, as I've mentioned, your side hustles. Your side hustles are actually good because they also allow you to move gradually, to also learn whether you want to go into business or you don't, or you'd rather stay employed. So yes, I think Andy has mentioned the issue of research. I am mentioning, or rather emphasizing, the issue of reputational, building a reputation, and also growing small and adding and taking one step at a time so that you can learn teething problems within your effort. Because you can be overwhelmed by big projects. I know there is a temptation out there if there is a big deal, because people are talking about big deals, and they are participating in big deals. There is a risk that you may take. It's a high risk if you participate in big deals with no experience, no understanding, and so forth. Now, I am talking more on one level of the society. But then you do have another level of people who have sufficient experience, who have worked for big corporates at senior management levels. Again, in South Africa, to start a business, you have to have a proper idea, a very thorough idea. Remember, business, in fact, banks, before they could even finance you, they will finance you on the basis that they see that they are secured in giving you money. So those are some of the factors that you always must take into consideration as you are thinking around going into business. So the safest route is to grow gradually, so that if you fall within the shorter steps that you have taken. Thank you.
When you say you must have a proper idea, what does that mean for someone like me who doesn't know what that means? What is a proper idea? Brother Glenn is keen to answer that one. What is a proper idea?
Take it, Glenn.
So, Nwabisa, I think you got to remember that a successful business solves a problem. Yeah. That's what makes them successful, is that they're solving a problem. Now, Sister Andiswa was telling us, so her problem was that she was helping people who needed a solution, right? So that is the problem she was solving. And each business needs to solve a problem. That is the basic foundational building block that you need in a successful business, is you need to solve a problem in a way that's generally better than everybody else does it, because that's what gives you what we call a competitive advantage. Okay. But the idea is that there's a problem out there that somebody's willing to part with money to have it solved. That's what a business is.
Okay.
Sibungile, you want to build on that, or?
Right, sure. Look, now, in the solving of the problem, sometimes it is causing the problem. It's all about making the actual problem itself. You must be able to make this idea bankable. I think when I'm talking about proper idea, some of the elements into that, it must be bankable. You must be able to see it through. In other words, you see that from the beginning, and you are able to show realistically how will you get actually to the end. And that takes also a very thorough understanding, sometimes of the sector itself, if you are talking different sectors. So banks or financiers, they actually finance two things: your understanding of what you are getting into, and they also then finance the business itself.
Okay.
I hope I'm covering you now.
When we're talking finance, there's a question that's been raised to ask with the I'll pose it to all three of you, that with your own businesses, did you go somewhere for funding when you started off? Because I think that's what they're asking, that you do your research.
No, sorry, I'm going to jump in here. I rather, before we go on to a different topic, can I just build on something that Sibungile was saying there first? He was talking about giving a leg up.
Yeah.
And when he was talking about making it bankable, I think that as business people, this is where the biggest area that we can help somebody. So a new or somebody who wants to be a new entrepreneur who doesn't have experience yet, you need to understand that we entrepreneurs value failure. And what I mean by that is that I remember when I was about to venture out on my first, actually it was my second entrepreneurial venture. And I was talking to a friend of mine from church who's also a successful entrepreneur. And we were talking about my first business. And my first business, I absolutely crashed and burnt it. I mean, it was bad. It was an absolute disaster.
I was about to ask what happened to it.
I'll tell you the story now. But it was a cool idea, but the market wasn't ready. That's the problem. And that happens sometimes. But I absolutely crashed and burned it. And I was telling my friend about it. And he said, "Oh, Glenn, that's such good news. So you've paid your school fees," he said to me.
You've paid your dues, yeah.
Exactly. Because here's the thing. And I think what we would like to do in the seminar is help share some of the school fees we've paid to everybody else who's out there. And that, I think, is what the leg up is about. Like, for me, leg up is less about money. It's very seldom about money. It's about knowledge and it's about time. Those are the two things that it's about. So where we've made all the mistakes, we've been in business with the wrong business partners. We've done it all, and between the three of us, I think we've got there's always war stories that entrepreneurs have. But I think that's what I think is the real leg up. If you're somebody who wants to start out with a new business, go find somebody who's done it successfully and go ask them, get them to mentor you. Save up money to take them out for lunch, and you must pay for lunch because they're giving you a service by giving you knowledge. Take them out for lunch and pick their brain. Download as much information as you can from them. Have a notebook with you. Write down notes of all the cool things, that the great ideas. Because when you've paid school fees, man, it's going to save you so much. If you're learning from somebody who's done it and you get to do it the right way first time, man, I can't even begin to tell you how much time and effort and heartache and stress and waking up at 2:00 in the morning thinking, oh my goodness, what am I doing? How much of that you're going to be saving.
Interesting how you say giving a leg up is not just about money or funding someone. It's about mentorship and coaching. But I think we also need to realize that that's also money. So if you could monetize the time that you are giving to a person, coaching them, teaching them what to do, spending a lunch hour with them to take them through what you've gone through, which you could spend trying to talk to a new client, that's also time. So there's an opportunity cost for you as well as the business owner that you're giving in. So I think it's just important that we also understand that if someone does give you that amount of attention, they are sacrificing something to give that to you. So it's important to value that as well. Going back to the issue of funding, I think we're going to go back to this issue, right?
Are we going to still be talking more about the building blocks of a business still?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you just let me know when I can jump in on that.
Okay. I think let's just address this issue of funding, because I think it's just important. I'm not saying go mention the financial institution if it's a financial institution or the person, but I think it's just important for people to have an understanding that I started. I think Sister Andrea made a point that she kept emphasizing, that I started with nothing, which I think not everybody can say that. Some people don't start with nothing. They've got a trust fund. And they're starting with a trust fund. So for you on this call, did you have trust funds? Did you get help from somebody? Did you Did you sell your house? Did you sell your furniture? How did you get the funding to get started? Even if it's the first venture that you got into.
Are you asking Glenn about trust fund? Well, sure, you're not asking me. Look,
Glenn is a candidate, but you can go first. You can go first.
Look, I'm a child of I'm a child of a hawker. I have been educated by income from. But my mother was a hawker. She was selling minced meat in a gutter. Sorry.
Okay.
At school. Now, one of the beautiful things that I learned out of that, and I'm only realizing that I naturally or subconsciously learned that, are some of the business elements: hustling, doing something out of nothing, starting it on a smaller scale and growing it big. I mean, I really credit her for the entrepreneurial flair that she had, because she actually has produced a better business person springing from that. And maybe these are some of the things that we should be taking note to. Coming back to your issue, the result of her education, the result of the education that she gave me, have made me have an asset called human capital.
Okay.
Basically,
can you expand what that is?
I started by selling knowledge.
Okay.
Now, the capitalization of knowledge is almost nothing. It's all about talking and basically explaining the knowledge that I have. I started there and I've grown there. I actually have other business units which are not knowledge-based, but I've always kept the management consulting, because that has been my starting point. That's what has always been paying my bills. That's what has been keeping the home fires burning. So I'm saying some of us are fairly knowledgeable, and some of our knowledge, and this is something that I found not to be exported, rather traded in South Africa sufficiently. And when you are talking about export, we only think of exporting goods, and we are only thinking of commercial goods. And I'm saying we need to start packaging knowledge and make it, because it's a very crucial commodity that always would give us easy leg up, because there is almost no capitalization of knowledge. And then you move from there, and then you can start venturing or diversification. So yes, coming back to your question, you were asking how much was my startup? No, I got employed. After employment, I ventured into selling knowledge. I have since been selling knowledge, but then still I ventured into other businesses. Thank you.
Okay, great. Sister Andiswa?
As I said that with my research, I find out that at least I can start small and depend on medical aid payouts. So I started very, very small. As I was saying that my business was hand to mouth. And with the reputation that I've built, and then I went bigger as I get more clientele and being more marketed. So that's how it helped me. I agree with Brother Sbongile that you need to start small. You because the more you think, you start very big, and when you fall, it gets very dangerous. So it helped me with starting small, and I cannot overemphasize that with your smallest thing that you have, give back to God. That's what it helped me. It helped me because that was when I learned and I was able to tithe. When I make a commitment that because God, I asked you, I pray to you for this venture that I'm taking, and I'm making this commitment with the first fruits of this, I will give back to God. And giving back to God, it's not only monetary value, also your time. As I'm saying, as I'm offering medical services and counseling services, giving those sessions to those that can't afford also assisted me to where I am today, where I would go out of my way and see people that can't afford my services, but I know that they need them. That's how God has helped me also to give back. Giving back my time and giving back, as I said, that one of the things that motivated me was I wanted to advocate about my profession to more of African population, because it professionally to most of us. Even now, I'm in 10 years working in private, but even still today, I'm doing education. And I'm happy to say that through that education now, there are students, first year, second year students that are doing occupational therapies. Are learning to become an occupational therapist. So giving also, it's not means that you need to give money, but giving your time and starting small, that is very, very important. And as I said, fortunately, the kind of business doesn't need that much of money
capital.
So with me, I could go bigger, and then at the beginning, I was just solely an occupational therapist registered with BHF, with HPCSA, and then as time goes and I realized that I can go bigger. I can have my own company now. I am running using a company, AMG Occupational Therapy Services and Counseling. So you start small. When I started, I didn't start as a CC. Now I'm operating as a company where I serve broader population and where I need services of other therapists, which is how I give back to God, also to get jobs for other therapists and to mentor and coach other therapists and to lead as an example to show them that this is doable. You can have your own private practice, but with time, I agree with Brother Sbongile when he says that in every business you must expect it teething stages. There are teething stages, and you must be ready for them. But I'm glad now that at least with the experience that I have, including the setbacks that I've experienced, I am able to mentor and coach other therapists and motivate them and show them that this is doable. This is doable.
Okay, great. I think I like one of the points you made, that you started as a sole prop and then you registered a company at a later stage. And I think it's important for people to not look down on humble beginnings. To know that you can start small and then upscale as the need arises. Brother Glenn, tell us about that trust fund.
The trust fund, baby. I need to talk to my parents clearly because something's wrong. So my grandfather was a railway worker. He was a conductor on a railway train. So I come from humble background, actually. And I was with my parents. Both my parents left home sort of just after school, and they put themselves through, while they were working, they put themselves through university. My mom through nursing school, and by doing that, I've been very privileged that they gave me a good education. That was their gift to me. In fact, I remember my mom, when I was in university, my mom saying to me, "Glenn, I hope you're enjoying your inheritance." So the gift of education was the trust fund that my parents gave me, and I've been very, very privileged. And if I look back at this gift of education, I can see how it's put my career on like you're on a bit more fast forward than if you have to do it yourself the hard way. And that was a privilege that I had. I freely admit it. But I think the two business, when you're talking about funding, my one business. So essentially, my one business I ran, my very first business, I was working at the accounting firm, and I had that as my side hustle.
Yeah.
And that's the business I crashed and burned horribly. And so I learned a lot out of that experience. But one thing when you're a partner in these larger accounting firms is you get to build a great network. And that's a gift. I think Brother Sibongile is very similar in some ways. When you act ethically, you behave ethically towards people, people can see that over a period of time that you're looking for their best when you're a service provider for them. That is the biggest, builds reputation that Brother Sibongile was talking about earlier. It builds reputation, it builds the ability to get referrals, it builds this quick buck thing is the worst thing you can do for business. It's the worst thing. Let's be corrupt and whatever. You know what? your reputation, business in South Africa is such a small community. In Cape Town, I can only speak about Cape Town, but everybody knows everybody. All the business, the successful business people generally through somebody else knows all the successful business people. And your reputation, you can ruin your reputation so quickly. You just got to make one really bad decision or burn the wrong person, and you will find it very, very difficult. So my first advice to get funding is to always be ethical, because not only is it the right thing to do for the Lord, but not, over the long term, it actually works in your favor, because you build this reputation of being somebody that, hey, you know what, I can go do business with this person because I know that I trust them. I know that they're going to be looking out for me. And so when I left the accounting firm, I also, to pay the bills, I started a knowledge company, because I have this network, and networks come for free. You know, you can pick up a phone and say, hey, how's it going? It doesn't cost you anything. A phone call. And so networks, you can work a network, and that's the kind of gift that I think, coming back to what Brother Simongile was talking about earlier about that leg up, is that if you come talk to somebody who is looking to be a mentor for you, if that mentor trusts you, they would be willing to open up their network to you, perhaps. And I say perhaps. A network is a very precious thing. It's my most precious asset that I have, is my network. Because, and I'll explain to you why now. It's not just the work referrals or things like that. It's actually for my second business that I'm involved with now. So it's not a knowledge business. It's a business that required a huge amount of capital to go in. But I could leverage my network to get that capital. So I would, to somebody who, and we'll talk about, if you want to, we can talk about how to choose a business partner. Because that's a whole story on its own. But, you know, I was able to, number one, choose a business partner very carefully, somebody who I was already in my network, and I could say, hey, listen, this is what we're trying to do. He did his own due diligence on the project that we were involved with, and he said, okay, look, I really like this. And he put the money in. So I used the magic thing that doesn't happen very often, called OPM, other people's money, you know.
Okay.
And I was very lucky, I was very privileged to be able to do that, because I had my network. That happened because of my network. It didn't happen anywhere else. It was my network, and people trusted me. Which again comes back to the whole idea of being ethical in business, because if I didn't have that trust, that wouldn't have happened. I would have to have hoodwinked somebody, and the people with the real serious money don't get hoodwinked very easy, because they've been around the block too many times. They know how to do proper due diligence. They know how to verify things. So it's just not worth it. So yeah, so my one business, I sell knowledge, so I didn't need capital. My other business, I managed to leverage my network to make it happen.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. You did. I think we might need another session where we talk more about intellectual property, because I think there's gray lines around that, especially when it relates to the church. How do I build the church for the knowledge that I already have, that I can be able to give? You know, if you're talking about a church, because with the church you are expected to give an offering, you know, and the offering is not just monetary. So if there is a service that you can be able to provide, and the service does not only include people externally, or it includes the organization as well, how then are you able to package that very well? I think we can Fundisi, think about having a session where we can empower people about that, because there are people that are interested to know, how do you package your intellectual property? And I'm glad that Brother Gobile and Brother Glenn have mentioned that. That's also one of the key things, because we always think we have to go invent a certain product, or we have to go come up with something else outside of what we already know, which is something that could solve other people's problems. And I think we can move to talking about failures. I think someone raised this, and I know we had said we could talk about that, where we can talk about, have you had any failures? I know you, Glenn, you already said you had a business that crashed and burned, but have you made decisions somewhere where they seemed like grand ideas at the time, and they backfired badly, or you lost money, or you didn't manage finances, or finances were not managed very well, and that compromised your business? And how did you get out of that situation? And if you are still in that situation, please be honest with us as well and say, I'm still swimming, I don't know how to get out of it. But just share with us about failures and how you've been able to be resilient with that as well. Anyone can jump in.
When you talk about that, I almost lost part. Look, I may not be that specific about some of the failures. I've I've burned my fingers a couple of times.
Yeah.
However, there are certain fundamental principles that I've learned out of that. And I will make a non-business related example.
Okay.
So sometimes when you are not sufficiently sufficiently experienced, you jump into certain things quicker, and you burn your fingers, and so you learn from errors. I'll just make a simple example. As you progress and you do businesses and you engage on this and you have boardroom conflicts and stuff, sometimes you think that, look, I can deal with certain problems, and you also grow being litigious and things like those. So I've bent my fingers in business. I went under a couple of times, but then I managed to bounce back. I guess
When you say you went under, what do you mean?
when you go under, it's a situation where you actually do not make sufficient investment, because essence of business is also about creating wealth for growth.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get excited, and when we get monies, and you don't do proper calculations, you can't differentiate from business money and income that actually has to come to you.
Okay.
As in a form of remuneration. You think that if you are paid 100,000, that is your salary for you to spend. Forget that you actually have a business to grow. So those are some of the things that you learn and things like those. So the example I wanted to bring is that of being litigious. And I am saying this because generally now when I reflect on that, I say, oh goodness, I thought that no, I know it all, and I actually do not. I did a transaction, and this transaction did not go well, and we went on litigation with this gentleman.
Okay.
And people kept on advising me, hey man, litigation is never good. And you know, out of that, and I felt that, look, I'm correct, I'm right. And later on I learned that you know, litigation is or can actually be bad from you litigating and the one who is litigated. Whether you win or you don't, you don't win that, but you will not come out of litigation without being bruised. And at times, when you get into that space, it drains resources unnecessarily over something that you could have done out of court settlements.
Okay.
I'm just making but one example out of that. So another example is the one I was referring to, where I was saying sometimes it's the ability to effectively manage your finances and know that this money is the business money. It's not my personal money. And out of that, then you squander all the money and you basically go down. When opportunities present themselves, you are unable to grab them. and then you start going under. But then key is learning out of that, having people who would guide you in that regard. And I am talking about leg up because I have also been sufficiently coached by some people. I have been sufficiently advised by a lot of people. So I believe that as business people, coaching, mentorship, and such things actually help you progress a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Sister Andiswa, do you want to come in on learnings and learning curves that you've had to come across as well?
Yes. The learning curve is also around finances, because when you get when you see that the income is like you're getting more income, you get excited, you get wild ideas, and I think my failure was that. Thinking that you're saving on the other side, you don't want to hire everyone into your business, because you don't want to accumulate unnecessary debt. But at the same time, what I've realized, it is important that you outsource and get the services and give the services that you don't have experience in to those that have experience, like in accounting, in management of finances, and human resource, in terms of when you have employees. So that's where I felt that I had some challenges where I thought I would manage things on my own, because at the same time I don't want to get too much excited and have to pay so and so, and being unable to pay so and so for a particular service. But I want to emphasize that it is important for your business to get advice, and if you have to pay for people that have expertise on those areas, like in terms of human resource and financial management, do so, because poor financial management can destroy your business. There are so many financial hiccups that you tend to bump to, and they can destroy your business. And also in terms of who you work with, like your business partners and things, because you tend to get people that you have different personalities, and the other people they don't want to start small as you. They don't believe in starting small, and that having business dealings with people that you don't have the same vision, and you're not in the same you don't run the business the same, you don't have the same beliefs, it can lead you to so many failures. Because in my case, we tried to have a joint practice with some of the therapists, but it got
disastrous. Yeah.
And stressful, and it involved where we had to go without thinking. We had to seek. We accepted financial assistance without reading the thin lines in between. Because when we were already in it, when we realized that the interest that we are paying with this institution, it's really, we're not getting anything. We'll never make any profit. And so you need to be careful when you also, in terms of where you get your financial assistance, you need to read your contracts very carefully. And if it means when you do that, you seek professional help. You rather pay for the professional help than to pay for the setbacks that you end up getting involved in. So that's basically.
Okay, Brother Glenn.
So I've crashed and burned one business really badly. So that was my side hustle when I was at the accounting firm, and it was a very interesting educational training business. But there's many different reasons why a business can go wrong, and this one was that the market just wasn't ready for it. I didn't do enough research into the market at the time, and I was naive, to be blunt, and because of that, it cost me a lot of money. So.
Okay.
I look back and I can laugh. At the time, it was heartbreaking, and you put your heart and soul into a business. A business is like a child. You care for it, and you nurture it, and you have to manage it, and you have to look after it, and make sure it goes to bed on time, and gets up and brushes its teeth, and that's all the processes that the business has to follow. And I was naive. I was young and stupid, and I made a mistake, and hopefully I've learned some lessons from it.
Yeah,
That
hopefully.
answers your question.
Yes, yes, it does. I think it's just important to re-emphasize the point that Sister Anderson made. Sister Anderson, you can put yourself on mute to just re-emphasize the point that she made about not trying to be a jack of all trades. Because I think it's a big mistake that most people make, because they're wanting to be the accountant, they're wanting to be HR, they're wanting to be everything, and that also diverts time away from what you are good at, the subject matter that you are an expert in, because you're trying to figure out numbers. So I think between balancing the financial side of it, the cost of it, and also balancing the time that you might be spending and the mistakes that you could make in trying to do that, rather find someone who can be able to assist you with that. There's a question that just came asking about.
Sorry,
yeah.
Just before we jump forward, so something Sister Andiswa said. She spoke about business partners. If you want to talk about that, we can.
Yes, that'd be great.
Some interesting stuff we can say about that.
Okay.
And so one of the things I always say to my clients, and I've tried to follow that as well, and I think it's a biblical principle, because the Bible obviously talks about being unequally yoked, right? And I believe that applies to business as well as marriage. And what I mean by that is that I always tell my clients, and like I said, I follow this myself, is I say this: we choose our marriage partners really, really carefully, right?
Yes.
The reality is that you need to choose your business partners even more carefully.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that, in business, money is always the biggest stressor in any, like if there's a marriage that's falling apart, usually money has a massive role to play in the marriage falling apart. It's just, now in business, you're only involved with money. Now, there's none of the other stuff, like all the social stuff is there, but like money is a bigger issue in your life. So when things go bad, money gets even a bigger issue. But what's more telling is that if you're in partnership with somebody, or if you go into a business with somebody, it is exactly like being married to them. It's exactly like it. There's
a contract.
Well, there is a contract, yeah. So we have shareholder agreements. Let's call it an antenuptial contract, right? So in business, we have shareholder agreements and partnership agreements. That is the antenuptial contract of business. And contracts are just about contracts are there for when things go wrong, right? Everything else is like expectation. So, hey, you're going to do this, I'm going to do that, and let's put that down in writing. That's the contract.
Yeah.
But when it comes to business, the culture, the character of the person that you're going into business with is actually the biggest indicator of how successful your business partnership is going to be. Just like it is in marriage. The person's character is the biggest thing. So if in business, you need to be pulling, just like in marriage, you need to be pulling in the same direction. In business, it's exactly the same. You are pulling a business in a certain direction. You have a strategy. And believe it, those of us who have had strategic meetings know that your philosophy about life has a massive impact to play in how you position your business and strategize about your business. Like, for example, if you're in business with a non-Adventist, right? What's going to be happening when you have Sabbath conversations? Like they'll say, "Oh no, you don't have to work, but I'm going to work on Sabbath," And so you have all these like really difficult things that have to happen, discussions that you have to have. And so the person's character, like let's say they're not ethical, let's say they lie. that is, if you're married to somebody who lies, how's that going to end, right? Not very well. It's the same with business. If you're in business with somebody who's a liar or a cheat, your business is going to fail. And and so think about your business partners just as if you're marrying them, because parting ways in business is just like a divorce. You fight about money. We've all seen people who've gotten divorced, and it's a big fight, and it's horrible. And you fight about the kids, you fight about this, everything's just a big fight.
Yeah.
Parting ways in business is worse. It's exactly the same thing that happened. You fight about money. It's always the big one. Who does what? But it's your fault. No, it's your fault. And it's a big fight. It's not worth it. So choose your business partners really, really carefully. Think of it like you're getting married to them, because in practice, it's exactly the same.
Okay. Before we add on to this point, Brother Glenn, I hope you have found that spreadsheet, because we have a viewer who is keen to see that spreadsheet a bit later when we wrap up. I think we're going to have 2 more questions before we get to the spreadsheet. But before we get to the questions, you can add, Brother Gobile.
Thank you so much. I'm not going to talk about the divorce. I think Glenn has covered that very, very, very well.
Okay.
I wanted to also just go into some questions that I picked up on the screen. One,
the conference one. Can we?
People spaced.
Can we hold that off for a bit later? I just want to just ask this question quickly about tithing for the business. There's a question that's been asked about tithing for the business, and I think maybe Pastor Lefume can come in on this one to talk about tithing for the business. So when you've got a business that's making revenue, right, and your profit, your final profit or net income is there. Do you tithe from your net income, and then you tithe again from your remuneration that you're getting from your business? How does it work? I think that's the question that's being asked. Do you tithe from the remuneration, or does the business tithe, or both?
Okay. It is clear God says we tithe from increase. That means in business terms, that would be profit.
Okay.
You are not tithing from your capital, because the capital runs the business.
Correct.
But you're tithing from the increase, the profit. That's where you are tithing from.
Okay. So if you've tithed from the profit, so let's say the business made R500,000 as the profit, right? And as the owner, probably the only owner of the business, I've got remuneration that I've had. Do I still tithe from there? Because part of the expenses of the business would have been to pay my salary, right? So do I then tithe from the business only, or do I tithe from both as the sole proprietor, for example?
Well, in that case, it depends on whether you regard the entire profit as your gross, or you regard it as the income then you get as your net. But if you look at that, maybe let me answer it in a question form. Do you want net blessings or gross blessings?
Gross, without question.
You see? So God works with us the way we want to. If we want Him to give us gross blessings, that's where we will be returning our tithe from.
Okay. All right. Any additions from the entrepreneurs, or you'd like to plead the fifth on this one?
Look, for me, I don't have any reference in this regard. This is my view. You draw, running a business properly, you draw a salary, and out of your salary, then you are tithing, right? Allow me not to get into the net tithing or the gross tithing, but you are tithing from your salary. Now, this is a personal view. You do decide, if you so wish, that you want to tithe for your business. In other words, you as your business makes profits, then you draw tithe for your business, while there is your remuneration and your salary. I would imagine that's a soul. It's a soul discretion issue, because someone else would argue that that money is money for the business, which is a separate entity legally from yourself. The extent that it finances your lifestyle, then you are actually tithing on the basis of that income that you would get, such as your dividends and stuff. However, and I'm saying that some people do business tithing, and they draw tithe from that. And I remember there's someone I met who was sharing that with me. So I'm saying I would imagine it's a prerogative issue. I have not really come across any dictate in the policy provisions, but that's just my view. However, from what you are getting or you are remunerated for, then a tithe is expected. Thank you.
Yeah, Nani. I think what is important here is that we understand the principle of tithing.
Yes.
A person decides how they want to approach this. It is very, very important. But what is important is that is for us to understand that we need to return to God that which is due to God without cheating.
Yeah.
Principle I want to emphasize. So you make a promise to God yourself. And once you make that promise to God, you stick to that promise and deliver on that promise, because it is a vow you have made to God. And the principle God uses, once you deliver on your vows, if because of delivering on your vows you get into trouble, he says, call upon me. So he's the one who rescues you. But if you say to God, God, this is what I want to do. This is what I promise you. 10% of this increase of mine, I'm going to give it back to you. And then I will give you a percentage from the very same income as an offering to you. And once you stick to that promise, God blesses you for that. And that's the point we are building on as we say this afternoon. Give God something to bless. What you give to God, he blesses. It is very, very important that we understand that you determine how much you want to give to God. He has only identified tithe, which is 10% of your income, your increase. That's the principle.
Okay, Mfundisi. I think in trying to move towards wrapping up, there is a question that was asked. I think earlier we had talked about broadening the base or broadening the revenue base, and we focused more on individuals, and we have not touched on what ideas could be there for broadening the revenue base for the corporation or for the organization, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. What are your thoughts on what could be done to try and broaden the revenue base of the church, using the skills that people have and being able to grow that? Brother Gobile, we can start with you.
Thanks, no. Just to first wrap the first one up before then I can go to this part. I think in essence, when we are talking about broadening the base for business people, and my challenge therefore is that there is a space to participate as business people in the conference. And maybe Mfundisi, again, this is one challenge that you ought to take up, wherein you create space in a form of a forum, so that you can exploit some of the thoughts and ideas of how business people can participate in this. And some people want this because it actually activates the giving spirit that we have, and they actually want to be giving, which is in line with what God actually expect of us. And so therefore we maybe need to be to allow this deliberately so that people can participate. There's someone who asked, how much do you put aside for you to from your remuneration to start a business? I'm sure we can't be prescriptive. People make savings from their remuneration, and out of your savings, depending on what you want to do, you make your savings just as a matter of living. But then from there, depending on what you do, your savings and or your investments then would act as your capital in some instances for you to start your businesses. So I just wanted to answer that. And with my earlier point, I was actually responding to Tabitha that look, there needs to be some forum wherein business people, there are a lot of bright guys out there who have brilliant business ideas, like the two guys that we have here on the studio, who actually could come up with beautiful business ideas. Thank you, Noah. Coming to your question, your question talks about what can the church do as a corporate body now to broaden the very same base. And you are asking this during a very interesting time period where people have been retrenched from employment. People are unable to continue with their businesses as a result of COVID. And actually this has an impact on their income. Some people have not been getting income. Some have not been generating income for a while. And this has had a trickling effect to the conference itself. I'm talking from a remitting point of view, because people do not have income in this regard. So the thinking one has is, and the church needs to understand this, that the church has a very interesting product package. The church has a very interesting product package in different forms. I will probably make a few examples and then allow my colleagues to come in. I'll start with what I read, which came out in 2018, where Jamaica government decided to adopt. They decided to adopt Pathfinders, or a Pathfinder program, as an upskilling program for young people in primary schools and also their high schools. This is government taking the Pathfinder program and plug it into their curricula as an extramural activity. And I said, wow, this is something. And in fact, when the Minister of Education in Jamaica talks about that, they say, this is such a good curriculum, very qualitative. And remember, if you are talking about the Pathfinder program, you are talking about skills that they are trained on, learning about stars, doing canoeing, cycling, cooking, a whole lot of balanced empowerment. Basically, if you have children that are here, you actually can almost plug every child in but one of the streams, and you offer extramural empowerment for that child. And basically also you can replicate this. And there's one part that I always enjoy and like about Pathfindering, and it's some of their events that they do, like your I hope Pastor Pomel is not listening when I'm thinking about when I have to say this, being a master guide now. But some of their events that they do, and some of these events that they do are things that are so empowering in the society, such that you can have highly skilled children. One of them they are able to do a stretcher out of a blanket and 2 poles. And where they are playing in the parks and someone gets injured, they basically, without making that injury to be worse, they can do that. Those are some of the skills that they are learning. Now, I'm therefore saying, and I know that the division, SID, has actually introduced community clubs, but I am saying, Pastor Lefume, why don't we package and commercialize this? We are not selling this because the recipient of that will still get it for free, but you commercialize it to give it and sell it to government. And I'm saying government because government actually has money, but they do not have content. And we actually have content, but we do not have money. And the question is, who should go to who? Will we come to us? If government is not going to come to us, let's go to them and present this. Here is a second example. The Department of Social Development is running a program called social workers, if there's any listening here would know. They are running a program that relates to, it's called family revitalization. Now, this program now currently falls under what community development, because social development is trying to make sure that they are building a good citizenry. Now, one of the programs, if you are talking about family revitalization, there is a child. There's some things, you know, some of the families have different problems. Let's just talk about a problem with a child, an abusive father or anything. The social workers would come in, they call that statutory work. They would come in, come and do the assessment, report, take that child to a home and so forth, up until there is integration, if things are better, or whoever that is abusive has been arrested or taken away from providing risk to these people. Now come to the part that I want to emphasize to the church. The church, there is a part within what social development does. It's called prevention. Before dealing with a social crisis, government is looking at ways and means of providing prevention. And this prevention actually relates to what you call awareness. Okay. They run in a form of awareness. And they've got program. In fact, they are looking for programs for awareness. Awareness on youth issues, awareness on family programs, awareness on widows, how to manage a family as a widow, and all of those issues, because those are social issues that government is faced with, and government is having to finance all of the consequences of these failures and situations. Now, the church has that content, and government has money for that content. I was talking in preparation for this program, I was talking to someone in social development just to validate, because I've last dealt with this some time back. And she actually was confirming this, that government actually has money for this. And because they can't find a proper content, they tend to redirect some of these funds. And I'm saying the church has a full package. It's an international package, which just needs to be taken, and you just need to go and create this relationship, and you form a strategic, any kind of relationship. Government forms different types of partnership. You could be, as the church, an implementing agent. So what am I then bringing forth? I am saying it's about time that even as a corporate body, we start broadening the revenue base. When we do that, Pastor Lefume, you have people within the church fold, in the form of pastors, who have different skills. There are people who are specialists on family programs. There are people who are specialists on counseling. There are people who are specialists on youth programs. And what you could then be doing is to take some of these people who are already in your employ you deploy them right across the country, and you solicit funds from government. And when you do that, then it actually will complement, because tithing is not to be replaced. Tithing has a specific God's purpose, I believe. But I am saying, to complement the revenue base, the church needs to move into that space and start to claim and be opportunistic about some of these things. The kind of package, the good that we have, let us go out there and talk to government, create a relationship, and deliver some of these programs. Thank you. Now.
Okay, Brother Glenn, you had your hand up. I don't know if you can still remember what you wanted to say. I hope you can, but please go ahead.
Thanks. So I was just thinking about that question that popped up earlier about what the church can do for business people, and I'd like to say particularly for entrepreneurs. So this is people who are out there trying to learn and build a business. And I think the biggest thing that the church can do is to create a space for them where they can fellowship with each other. You know, an entrepreneur has very unique problems that they face. You know, there's moral things, so there's ethical issues that they face that are very unique to being in business. Like when you're having to fire somebody and go through, like, you know, this person is this the right thing to do for this person? This person has a family that they're supporting, you know, and you have to like weigh up all these very delicate and difficult concepts and issues. And I think a forum where they can get together, and the forum, Pastor Lefume, is not about asking them for money. Sorry, that is not what it's about. Things like that will happen naturally, but don't make it about that. Make it about a forum where entrepreneurs can support each other, because entrepreneurs are the only people who know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. The sleepless nights that you have, the times when things are going wrong and you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you think, oh my goodness, what am I doing? You know, and you know, we've all been through those kind of things. And I think that is the best thing the church can do, is to create that forum where they can support each other. I benchmark that to what ASI is in America. You know, the face of ASI that you see in America is this whole like once a year where they have this big conference and they raise a lot of money. That's actually not ASI. That is one very small part of ASI. That's very public, but it's very, very small part of ASI. ASI is actually about chapter meetings where entrepreneurs get together. And it's to be a proper member of ASI in America, you have to be a full-on entrepreneur. If you have to be able to write out the check for the business. If that's not you, you can't be a member. You can be another kind of member if you're like a professional in inverted commas, but you're not a proper member. ASI in America is about a space where entrepreneurs get to support each other through these difficult and ethical and moral dilemmas that entrepreneurs often have to face. And I think that is the best space that the church can create. Because unfortunately, I don't believe that ASI in South Africa is that space. It's something different, and there's a need. Maybe there's a need for ASI, what it is, or the space that it fills. But I don't think that there's a space in South Africa, what I've just described, where entrepreneurs get to support each other.
Okay, great. I think, Brother Glenn, let's get to the spreadsheet as the last clarity issue. And then from there we'll just have our closing remarks before Pastor goes ahead with the Vesper.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
All right. So what we're talking about the home loan, and this is a story of the home loan. And what I mean the story is that you'll see. It starts at the beginning. So if you remember the situation that we spoke about, the dream house cost 1.5 million rand, and there's that 1.5 million rand in yellow. And basically every month, every line here is a story of the month. So in month 1, the bank lends you 1.5 million rand, and at 10%, they charge you 12,500 rands interest. You then knock off the payment off of that, and so you have a closing balance. At the end of month 1, you still owe 1.498025 million rand. So basically, you've paid 1,975 Rand of your 1.5 million Rand. That's all what you paid off. So the difference between 1.4 million Rand that you paid and the 1.9 that you actually knocked off the balance is interest. So you can see here in the first years of the loan, by far the amount of extra that you pay is about interest. Everything, by far the portion of the payment that's biggest is interest. So let's fast forward this home loan now. So we're fast forwarding down to year 10, so month 120 there in yellow. In year 10, we're still paying 14,475 Rand a month, but the capital is only 5,300 Rand. So you're still paying a 9,000 Rand in interest here. Let's fast forward to year 15. In year 15, you're still paying 14,475 Rand a month. But here, the interest is 5,700 and you're paying 8,700 Rand capital. So only you can see here in a mortgage bond, only in the last 6
But
7
again,
years.
they're asking that you just zoom in a bit because they can't see. I think your numbers are a bit small. Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, that looks better.
All right,
Thank you.
sorry about that, guys. So the point that I'm making here is that only in the last 6 or 7 years of a mortgage bond, of a 20-year mortgage bond, is the interest portion even equal to the capital portion. After that, and then towards the end, obviously, it's almost all capital and less interest. But now let me go back to the beginning here and make a point. So if you say, hey, guys, let's pay off, I want to pay off, instead of paying this in 240 payments, 20 years times 12 months, sorry, I want to pay it off in 240 would be 239 payments. So I want to knock 1 month off the bond. People would say, well, maybe then I've got to double up my bond payment. No, it's not like that. You don't have to pay 28,000 Rand to knock off 1 month of your bond. That's not happened. You have to pay, in month 1, you've got to pay off 14,475 Rand, your normal payment, plus next month's capital, which is this one over there, 1,992. And let me just work that out because I don't have a calculator with me. And if I do it in my head, I'll get it wrong. Oops, that's wrong. Minus, let me do that again. That plus, there we go. So if instead of paying 14,475 Rand, if I pay 16,000 Rand, I've knocked a whole month off the life of my bond. I've just saved myself 12,484 Rand. Does that make sense? So you don't have to double your bond payment to knock a month of the life. You've just got to pay off the next month's capital, which is particularly in the early years of your mortgage bond, is a very small amount. Literally by adding like 2,000 Rand onto your payment, you've knocked off your entire next month's bond payment that you've fast forwarded, and right at the end there's a month less that you have to pay. So let me unshare this. Stop sharing. All right, am I back?
Yes.
Okay, I'm back.
You are.
So I hope that makes sense about a mortgage bond amortization or the story of the loan. It's not about doubling your bond payment to pay a month less. It's literally you got to pay the next month's capital, which in the early years of the mortgage bond is not a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think as we wrap up, I'll give each one 2 minutes to just say their closing remarks and their message that they have to fellow entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. I'll start with you, Sister Andiswa.
I must say thank you to the host and thank you to the participants. I've also learned a lot that will also be of assistance to my business as I go forward. And yeah, to people out there that are wanting to step out from their comfort zones. It is important that you know your story, you know what you want to do. I just want to emphasize on that if you're confident and you know and you do your research well about what you want to do, and use what you just learned today, so that you don't fall on the same thing that we have, the setbacks that we have experienced. So let's use this opportunity to go and correct what has went wrong, that has made setbacks in our businesses. And the most important thing, do what is good in God's eyes when you are running a business. And integrity as Christians is very important. Do what is best in God's eyes. That is the key that I want to leave with you today, that just operate your business with integrity.
Thank you, Brother Gobile.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. I am intrigued by Proverbs 19, verse 17. It says, whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them for what they have done. My goodness, I do want a debtor that is God. I'm sure that is a very good debtor. So this is a challenge I'm putting to my fellow entrepreneurs. I normally say there are 3 levels of happiness. There's instant happiness. When you eat a chocolate, you get instant gratification. The second level is acquisition. When you acquire, generally you always want to acquire more. Of course, certainly as you acquire something, there's a level of gratification and happiness that you derive. But the most sustainable and long-lasting level of happiness is when you do good to the next person. And the challenge to my fellows is that let us identify someone, let us identify people and do good to them. By so doing, we will be lending to the Lord. My goodness, we'll have a debtor that is God. Who doesn't want that? Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Brother Glenn.
Yeah, I think the whole point of why we're doing the seminar, right, is that we want to help other entrepreneurs in some kind of way. And hopefully, I pray and I hope that this has been a blessing to help them. But the reason we want to help them isn't so that they make more money. That's not what this is about. We want to help them so that they can be a blessing to others. And so I really want to kind of piggyback on what Sibongile was talking about earlier in his closing marks here, because I think he said it so well. That, I think that the whole idea is when we're successful, we can be a blessing to those around us. And I think that is, in my experience, and I mean, I am able to help some people, but not as many as I would like. And, for me, it gives me just so much joy and happiness when you're able to share what God has shared with you. This idea of being a steward, not only of the money in your bank, but also your business. You're a steward of, it's God's business. That's why we're stewards. That's what stewardship is all about, right? And so this idea of being a steward of even your business, so it's God's business that you're a steward of. You're managing it for God so that you can be a blessing for others around you. I really love that idea.
Okay, great. To sum up, I will just read 3 John, verse 2, chapter 1, verse 2. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. I want to thank you all for taking the time to share your stories and also answering some questions which might have been slightly uncomfortable, to help people that are needing more information. I will ask us now to just close our eyes in prayer before Mfundisi can take over. Let's just close our eyes and pray quickly. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for this afternoon that you have given us. Thank you for the informative session that we had. Thank you, dear Lord, that your spirit was here and we were able to learn a lot, and we were able to relate. We were able to have questions that were answered. And we thank you that we have a Bible that we work with as a basis for all that we do. Help us, dear Lord, that in our businesses, in our personal lives, we may prosper and be in good health, And that, dear Lord, in all that we do, we put you first, so that as good stewards, we may be able to see your blessings unfolding in our lives and being able to impact all those around us. Thank you, dear Lord, for this. Please be with the next program that is going to follow. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Then maybe before you think you are free to go, allow me to express my gratitude to all of you, the panelists and our host. Thank you very much. The purpose for this program was to actually make sure that we empower God's people, God's children, understanding that it is God who enables us to make sure that we are able to have sanity so that we can remain productive, whether we are employees or we are employers, or whether we employ ourselves. It is God who keeps us sane. Therefore, it is Him who enables us to make an income. And therefore, out of that, we are therefore able to assist somebody else to also make a living. And I hope and pray that what we set out to do, we have achieved by inspiring someone, whether they have lost income in this period or they have experienced, like all of us, a pay cut. Things that we can do to make sure that we augment our salaries with ideas that have been given here that will assist somebody who is sitting there at home, who's going through some turbulence because of COVID-19, whether the one loses employment, whether one experiences pay cut or retrenchment or whatever. But this will enable them to be able to put some bread on the table. But one other thing I wanted to achieve with this program is to speak to the danger of our time, particularly when it comes to entrepreneurs or business people. Most of the time we go to business people because we want a donation, because we want to go somewhere, we want to do something else. I'm glad that
Okay, I think we've lost Umfundisi. Okay, I think we've lost Umfundisi, but we are done with our program. I think we are going to step off the podium. Umfundisi will come back to the studio and continue with the remainder of the program for the day. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for an informative session. Have a blessed week.
Thanks. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you for being a good host.
Great.
Thank you.